The other piece that I sometimes will give as a confession, sort of, is that I have a fascination with money. I always have. I remember being a very young child, like the wee little ones up here, and being fascinated. This is back in the old days when people actually paid for things with cash. And being fascinated that my mom and my dad could hand colored pieces of paper over to store clerks and they would get things, and yet other colored pieces of paper nobody was very excited about. Oh, well, maybe they'd get hung on the fridge. And so I remember kind of puzzling that out, and I remember as I got older, I was always fascinated by the things that people would do for money. You know, things that they maybe wouldn't normally do, but if money was involved somehow, that was a game changer. And people would go off the rails and do things that were illegal or not very smart because money was out there. And so that always kind of has fascinated me. So sometimes my colleagues and I get to go to various high schools and Christian colleges across the country, and we get to talk to them about money and faith and giving in the church and all of that sort of stuff. And sometimes we will play a game involving Timbits. So we'll divide the class up into groups, and some groups get a whole great big Ziploc bag full of Timbits, as many as we'll stuff in there. And other groups get very few Timbits, sort of just, stretched out on the bottom of the great big empty Ziploc bag, which is kind of like real life. Some of us have a whole lot, and some of us don't have a whole lot. Now, these groups have to make decisions about housing and food and clothing and transportation. And if there are extra Timbits left over, then they actually get to use those Timbits in other ways. So they can think about things like big screen TVs, vacations, music lessons, or sports for the kids, that kind of thing. Again, kind of like we do in real life if we have extra money. Now, once the groups have decided how they're going to use their Timbits, we ask them to tell us what they chose so that we, as the larger group, can talk about the decisions that they made and why. Now, that part's not a whole lot like real life for most of us. We don't tend to talk about what we do with our Timbits or our money. So one of these classes, a very, very wealthy group, the group with the great big Ziploc bag stuffed full of Timbits, decided that they were going to be generous and proudly announced that they were giving 1/3 of their Timbits to charity. Well, there were whoops and cheers from across the class, but especially loud from those with the few Timbits across the bottom of the bag, because I think they thought that they would possibly be the recipients of some of this charitable giving. So that was all great, but when it came time for my colleague to go over with the, Timbits for Charity bowl and actually collect those Timbits, there was a very vocal outcry from this group going, "Oh, wait a minute, you're going to take our Timbits." Well, yes, you gave them to charity. And so that was just a reminder for me that sometimes reality is a little different than the philosophy. This group wanted to be generous and had decided that that's how they wanted to be viewed in the world and how they wanted to behave. But when it actually came time to part with their Timbits, that was just a little different story. That was a little too real for them, I guess. So the prayer of Augur, which is Proverbs 30, 7-9, hidden in the back of Proverbs, it's this little, just couple verses. It's from Augur, and his name means collector, and he tended to collect wise sayings and observations of others. And he offers this prayer. So a contemporary English version might sound something like this. "There are 2 things, Lord, that I want you to do for me before I die. Make me absolutely honest, and don't let me be too poor or too rich. Give me just what I need. If I have too much to eat, I might forget about you, and if I don't have enough, I might steal and disgrace your name." Now I want you to notice that Augur seems to be most worried about his relationship with God. He's not concerned about having wealth and it causing envy by his neighbors or friends. He's not concerned about the time it would take to manage many servants, or the responsibility of looking after all of the stuff that wealth would permit him to own. He's not even concerned that somebody might come along and take it. Augur knows that prosperity can make people proud and forgetful, as if they have no need of God because they have money and status. They can be independent, and he is concerned that if he is wealthy, he may sin and separate himself from God. Likewise, he's not too worried about being poor and being taken advantage of, or being forced to work hard to earn a living, or even the suffering that can come from living in poverty. Stealing in his day could result in being hanged or whipped or sold into slavery. But he's not worried about those things. He's worried that if he is poor, he might sin and separate himself from God. Augur's not worried about where he will be most comfortable or happy. He's looking for the path free of temptation, that middle place of not too much and not too little, the place where he will be closest to God. Well, if you ask most Canadians, they would probably say, we're middle class. We kind of like being in the middle and being average. We don't necessarily want to identify as one of the most wealthy, and neither do we really want to be identified as some of the most poor in town. Now, you may recall the Occupy Wall Street movement and the phrase, we are the 99%, the protesters used. This was a couple years ago. It started in the U.S. and quickly spread all around the globe. And one of the main issues was the growing gap between the richest and the poorest Americans. In 2004, the top 1% of Americans controlled 42% of the total financial wealth in that country. If anything, it's gotten worse. There was a documentary about this gap in 2006 entitled The 1%, and that's where the protesters drew their phrase, we are the 99, we are not the 1%. Now, it's a surprisingly similar situation here in Canada. The 100 highest paid CEOs are making nearly 189 times the average Canadian wage. To give you real numbers, the average income of these 100 highest paid CEOs was $8.38 million in 2010. The average Canadian, on the other hand, made about $44,366. Or, another way, by noon on the first workday of the year, those top CEOs had already been paid the income that the average Canadian worker makes in an entire year. And you'll often see this in the newspaper in January, right? This great article about this gap. Now, perhaps those CEOs work hard and earn their wages. I don't know. But I do know that they earn more money than I do. A lot more. For the last 14 years, Canadian Business Magazine has published an annual list showing Canada's top 100 wealthiest people. Now, I looked, and I'm actually not in there. I looked just in case. And sadly, neither are any of my friends or family. In 2012, the richest Canadian is actually a whole family. It's the Thompson family, with $20 billion. Next in line is our friend Gail and Weston, with just over $8 billion. There's a few other names in the top 10 that you might know, the Irvings, the Rogers, and the Saputo families. They're all up there in the top 10 wealthiest Canadians. All have a few billion with a B. We have to go all the way down to number 70 on the list to get out of the billionaires. Where is number 70 here? There he is. Number 70 is Peter Nygaard, and he only has $994 million. The 100th richest Canadian, or the last, the lowliest, and the poorest on this list, is Amar Doman, the sole owner of an investment company. He's from out in BC, and he has only $654 million. I don't have a paltry million. Not even close, really. I am not rich. Now, if I'm honest with you, when I get this listing, it always kind of makes me laugh. There are little bios about, these people and what they do and how they live and quick facts about them, those kinds of things. But this is so far removed from my daily reality that I just have a hard time imagining what life would be like, frankly. 600 million, 1.3 billion, 21 billion? I can't imagine what that would mean for me or for my household. What do you do with $600 million? I don't know. But I'm pretty sure I probably wouldn't do my own laundry or pump my own gas. Some days that would be okay. But I have a dilemma. I live in Kitchener, very close to downtown. And very close to my Kitchener home are a number of community agencies that seek to help those who need a hand up. And if I stop to consider the folks that those agencies are serving, well, it might be a different conversation. Because I have savings, I'm employed. I have a home, I have mental and physical health, and I have people that love me. So perhaps I am rich after all. Now, my income and status didn't change in the last few minutes, but the measuring stick did. And that's really the key. To whom do I compare myself to determine whether I'm rich or I'm poor? Do I look up the ladder of wealth and status at folks like these, who have a whole lot more than I ever will? Or do I turn around and look at the many, many folks here at home and around the globe that have much less? be surprised to know that we Canadians are actually among the richest 1% of people who have ever lived on this planet. There's a website called globalrichlist.com. You can go there and type in your annual income in Canadian dollars, and you will be shown exactly where your household ranks in the world. But I'm not going to make you wait until you get home. $28,000 of annual income will put you in the top 10%. $68,000, which was the median or the middle Canadian household income in 2009, according to Statistics Canada, will put you in the top 1% of the world. The top 1% of the world is the middle income in Canada. So there's that number again, that 1%. And that's kind of uncomfortable. Because if we, me, you, are among the rich in the world, it's pretty hard to argue that we need or should have more. But we often have trouble seeing riches as a problem. It's hard to see riches as dangerous, but it's pretty easy to see them as a blessing. It's hard to see how this wealth might separate us from God. Our cup might overflow, but here in North America, many of us simply go out to whatever local box store and buy a bigger, shinier, newer cup. Few of us think of helping to fill that cup of others, let alone stopping to consider those that don't have a cup. Now, most of us don't desire to have less, of course. It's no fun to live in poverty. It's no fun to have fewer or no options about where or how you live, to have little choice over whether you go to bed hungry or full, over whether your children have to work so the household can survive or are able to go to school. But what about being rich? Doesn't it seem kind of fun to imagine life with 600 million or a few billion? Kind of a fun way to while away an afternoon, perhaps? Maybe even just an extra $10,000. Just take a moment and imagine. What would you do if you went home and discovered you had received a surprise inheritance from a distant relative long forgotten? $10,000 coming your way. What would you do? Vacation? Have some fun? Pay off some debt? Contribute to retirement or education funds for those wee ones? Home repairs? It could be kind of fun to sit back and imagine. Just imagine. That wonderful phrase from our lottery companies. Just imagine. Just a little more than what we have seems like it would be enough. Just a little more, and then we'll be happy. But do we ever honestly spend time worrying about having too much? Most of us don't spend a lot of time there. How many of us can honestly say that our chief desire is to have less, to move a few or a whole bunch of rungs down that ladder of wealth and status? 1 Timothy says it very well. We should be satisfied just to have food and clothes. People who want to be rich fall into all sorts of temptations and traps. They are caught in foolish and harmful desires that drag them down and destroy them. The love of money causes all kinds of trouble. Some people want money so much that they have given up their faith and caused themselves a lot of pain. It's the love of money that causes all kinds of trouble. Money is not a bad thing in and of itself. But the love of money, making that our focus and our chief goal, is really the problem. It's not bad to be rich. Having money is not a sin, but neither is it an automatic blessing to live life in poverty. Many of the folks listed as the top 100 are known for generosity with their time, their money, and their influence. Wealth can be a wonderful tool for building the kingdom and for bringing a healing presence to a world with lots of hurts. But the Bible does provide clear warnings against making an idol out of wealth, out of luxury as an end to itself. We are repeatedly warned to be grateful for what we have already received, rather than sulking that we don't have as much as some. This contentment thing isn't really a money issue. It's really a spiritual issue. Contentment is the grateful, faithful, and fruitful use of what we have. Think about those you know who are content, who just exude contentment, regardless of their situation. They may not have a lot, and it's quite likely that they don't, in fact. When we are content, we can enjoy what is available, rather than envying all that we don't have. And only then, when we have discovered contentment, are we ready to offer our first and our best to God, rather than leftovers or crumbs. Christine Grosz is the author of a devotional book called Swimming Upstream. She's from the States, And she shares her story as one who earns and spends money like many of us do here in North America. And she says the following: I am a committed Christian. My belief system tells me I should be okay with looking different from everyone else, and that I should be willing to go against cultural patterns, including keeping up with that proverbial Jones family. In fact, my beliefs tell me it's not just okay to go against the flow, it's actually expected. So why do I find myself looking so much like everyone else? Why am I buying brand name clothes and adding a sunroom to an already too big home? She goes on to say, I know myself pretty well. I have many wants. Every advertising section and bunch of flyers, every stroll through the mall is going to help me find a dozen new wants to add to my already long list. But when I am honest, though, I realize that my needs are very few. I need a place to live and some warmth. I need some food to eat and clean water to drink. I need clothes, my family, and some good friends that care about me. I need purpose in my life. But until I get past equating money with things that I want, I will never have money left over. Until I have money left over, I will not have peace of mind. I will never be as generous as I think God invites me to be. I will always focus on money as if it is all mine, and I will always struggle with the reality that it is all God's, and God has been generous. It is a struggle for most of us to find contentment. To find that balance between having and giving, keeping and sharing, working to earn, and sometimes working even harder to give some away. We're just not entirely rational about money and stuff, even though we may think we are. It's very easy to mislead ourselves into thinking that we have needs, when perhaps they're only wants. Daily we see and hear hundreds and hundreds of ads, even thousands, all designed to make ourselves or our lives better in some fashion, all designed to keep us discontented, and all designed to help us discover those unknown wants and turn those wants directly into needs. It's an elusive promise that advertising sells. It's very subtle and it's very seductive. Buy me and things will be better. Buy me and your life will be complete. Buy me and people will like you. Buy me and you will be happy. Now, before I started at Mennonite Foundation, I was a retailer and engaged in exactly that sort of behavior. Merely moving products, displaying them differently, adding a sign, and playing with the wording on that sign could dramatically change the volume that we sold. My employees, who were mostly young adults and teens, found it fascinating to monitor the results. They would pick an item and display it in a particular place in the store, perhaps on an end of an aisle or in the window or something like that, or in a bin. And then we'd pick something else, or we'd leave an item in its regular home on the shelf, but we'd add a sign, perhaps one extolling its many features and ways it could be used, or perhaps one with a sale price. Sales psychology is fascinating. Once, they even decided to try a buy one, get one regular price sign. Think about that. Yeah, buy one, get one regular price.
What a deal.
What a deal. And we sold more. Now, I may have told you this previously, but I used to work at a farm co-op store. Right? The place with pitchforks and dog food and work pants and those kinds of things. And so we could take items that weren't exactly impulse, things like water bowls, pig feeders, rumen magnets, and convince farmers to buy more based on how and where these items were displayed or what the sign said. So how do you think you fare? Well, frankly, you hardly stand a chance. We think we're rational about our shopping choices, but we are actually being manipulated and convinced from the moment we wake up in the morning until we go to sleep again at night. Advertisers spend millions and billions studying products and consumers. Companies pay so that their products will be placed in certain places on the shelf or certain aisles in a store. Advertisers are actually now doing brain scans of people. So they'll put them in an MRI and get them to imagine, ads and that kind of thing, or give them certain scents and see what happens. This is why you always have freshly baked goods in most grocery stores. It's that scent. All of this is dedicated to helping stores and the companies that make these items find the magic thing that will make you buy and make you buy more. Money affects how we view ourselves and how we see others. How my family viewed money is going to affect my views. Did we have too much? Just enough or too little? Was money talked about at the table, or was it one of those forbidden topics? How did we view those who had more and those who had less? Did we earn our money fairly? Did we work hard? Or did we laugh when we were able to outsmart and take advantage of someone? Did we share, and was it joyful, grudging, or perhaps non-existent? All of those attitudes and beliefs that I grew up with are going to affect how I view money, how I feel about earning it, saving it, spending it, and perhaps especially sharing it. Looking at the numbers on bank statements or counting those coins in our pockets can make us think we're objective. But make no mistake, our attitudes around money are intertwined with our feelings and wrapped tightly around our souls. Money's a tough topic. It's the last really big taboo. The thing that we're mostly reluctant to talk about. I spend a fair amount of my workday thinking, teaching, and learning about money. Yet even I rarely talk about my finances with anyone other than my husband. And my finances are his finances. They're absolutely joint. The Bible, however, spends a pile of time talking about money. There are about 500 verses on prayer, less than 500 about faith, and over 2,000 about money. 16 of the 38 New Testament parables speak explicitly about money. And I think that's for a reason. God knew this is a huge stumbling block for all of us. First Timothy reminds us that chasing after riches is dangerous and can cause us a lot of trouble and pain. Money itself is simply a tool, like a hammer or a spatula. Money can go out and do things that we can't do ourselves. But making money our idol or our goal, making money the most important thing, is really the dangerous part. Our guru is fearful that he would be tempted to do wrong if he is poor or rich, and therefore asks God to keep him safe on that middle path of just enough. It's dangerous to long after riches and money, to make those our goal. It's risky to be self-sufficient and to forget God. But having too little can also cause us to sin, to steal, or to stop trusting in God's abundance and care. Either condition, being rich or poor, can separate us from God. And relationship with God should really be our main goal, that thing that we long after most. This is hard stuff. There's a lot of discomfort talking about money, especially if we want to get into what we do with it. We may want to be generous and live in that middle way of not too much and not too little, but like those youth playing the Timbit game, it can be really difficult to actually part with some. A man was being interviewed for a job in a homeless shelter, and the interviewer said to him, "I have only 3 questions for you, sir. First, what would you do if you had 2 houses?" "Easy," the man said. "I'd give one to the poor." "Very well," the interviewer said. "What would you do if you had $100,000? "Easy," the man said. "I would immediately give half to the poor." "Very well," said the interviewer. "My last question is, what would you do if you had 2 pairs of shoes?" The man did not respond. And after a length of time, the interviewer finally broke the silence and said, "Sir, did you understand the question?" "Well, yes," said the man, "I understood the question, but I have 2 pairs of shoes." It's tough stuff. But given the spiritual danger and the threat of spiritual poverty that goes along with relying on our own instincts of enough, we need the help of others to figure this out. And I don't think we should be relying on the advertisers and the retailers to help us determine enough. We need folks that read the Bible and want to wrestle with what it has to say, the easy stuff and the tough stuff. So what can we do? Well, I'm going to give you some ideas, some take-homes, and perhaps some things to chat about later if you happen to stay around. We may need to accept that perhaps we are amongst the rich, even when our North American society tries to teach us that we are poor, that we don't have enough, that we desperately need more, and that there isn't enough. We need to work very hard to differentiate between wants and needs. And that may mean actively avoiding temptation by ignoring sale flyers and staying out of stores. Pay off your debts and set aside some for savings. Decide an appropriate lifestyle level for you and your household. This much and no more. Strive to live beneath your means if possible. Talk about what choices you have made and why. Accept that you have responsibility to be an example to those around you. Train your children and your grandchildren to be grateful. Train them and help them learn to share. Perhaps you match what they give away in time and money. Perhaps you invite them along when you are volunteering, or you find a place where you can work together to help someone else. Practice saying, "We have enough," until you can say it and mean it. Second, work to discern what is truly important to you in your household, and make those things the focus of your day as often as possible. Put the broom down, shut the computer off, come home from work, and spend some time with those that you care about. Remember how to play. Go blow some bubbles, bake some cookies, or go fishing. Pass on family stories and history. Recognize that you have choices. We can choose to work harder and longer to earn more and have more, or perhaps we could work a little less and live a less luxurious lifestyle and gain some time. And don't forget to spend some of that time with God. Third, work to make someone else's life better and include those both near and far. There are many Canadians every day that live at or below the poverty line and struggle to get by. Contribute your time and your resources to help balance those scales. Find something that excites you and get involved. Find a way to use your time and your talent. Things that you are passionate about and can help. And make use of them. Gifts of items and time can be appropriate, but money is truly the most portable gift. It's easily transferred to wherever the need is located around the globe, and it miraculously transforms into whatever item is needed. Be creative. How can you and your family find ways to show God's love to those around you? How can you be the hands and feet of Jesus to those in need? In my work at Mennonite Foundation, I'm often privileged to have conversations with folks as they work through charitable giving and questions of enough, both in their lifetime and in their estate plans. Some have decided to set a ceiling on their lifestyle, this much, and if we have more, we simply give it away. Their joy comes from wrestling with where to give money and seeing lives changed while they're still here. I hear stories from individuals and couples who say the more they give, the more they have, although not necessarily in purely monetary terms. But they find they continue to have enough and always have some extra to give away. They're often surprised and find it hard to explain how or why this happens. If you simply look at the math, the numbers, that doesn't work. But that's their reality. But it does seem that the more often we open our hands to give money away, the easier it is to do. The wants wander away and become less nagging, and those tendrils that money have woven around our soul can loosen and even fall away. We'll be having some conversations about money after the service today, I think after lunch today. So I hope that you'll join us. I hope that you'll stay. And I hope that we can start talking about money. We're not going to make you open up your last income tax return or bank statements or anything like that. But just talk about how we feel about money and faith. Because this is tough stuff. And it may be a place for us to come together and just at least start those conversations. Come up with some ideas for children, grandchildren, that kind of thing. So hopefully you'll pray with me as we close.